Hey everyone, welcome back to Resurrection's follow-up podcast. This episode, we are going to be looking specifically at Holy Week, which is upcoming very quickly. It's this next week. It starts Sunday with Palm Sunday, Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and even Resurrection Easter Sunday. So we're going to spend some time today, and I've got some guests with us, walking through Holy Week and exploring not only what Holy Week is, but why it's important, why it might matter to people like us, our everyday lives here in South Austin. So before we jump in, let's say hey to everybody and check in. Let's start over here. How you guys doing?
Hey, Melissa? We're good.
Melissa's here.
Melissa Gray.
The longest running co-host in follow-up podcast history.
Just call me co-host.
Co-host. If someone beats you, get a jacket if you do it 5 times in a row. Hey, Ryan Flanagan. We have 2 Ryans, so this is going to be tricky.
Just call me Flanny Panties.
Okay. I will not be calling you that. Oh, boy. Ryan?
Yeah. Hey.
Other Ryan?
It's good to be here on the podcast again.
Can I just call you... So Ryan Flanagan, you're going to go by Ryan Flanny, and I'll call Ryan Betcher Other Ryan.
Sure.
Through this whole episode.
Yeah, that's great.
There's the key. Just in case you guys get confused. How are you doing, Ryan Betcher? Other Ryan?
I'm doing well. Just finished some projects at our house, or are in the process of finishing some projects at our house. Kids are back in school, which is, it was fun to have them home, but also great to have them back in school. Mm-hmm. And excited about Holy Week. This is like, it always comes very quickly.
Before you know it.
It's just like, it's upon us, but it's like, it is, I mean, we'll talk about this, but it's my favorite time of year. There's nothing more exciting than Holy Week. I didn't know that.
This is your favorite time of year?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Holy Week is the best. And a lot of that is, in the last maybe 10 years, it's become that, I think, just as I've gotten into the tradition, the liturgy, and all that. It's like, yeah, but I don't want to segue there yet.
Yeah, don't give away the lead here. But it sounds like we'll have some stories. Because I want to, and I'm going to set this up, I want to hear some of our favorite Holy Week stories. And that'll, I think, help us answer for everyone listening why it's so important, why Holy Week is so good and important in our lives as Christians. And Ryan Flanagan, is Holy Week also some of your fondest memories, or does it just feel like a whole lot of singing for you?
I counted a couple of years ago. I don't think last year we did quite as many songs, but at my last church, I counted one Holy Week that we did 66 songs.
Wow.
Yeah, over the course of Maundy Thursday through...
it's a lot of singing.
Through Resurrection Day. It's a lot of singing, but we're singing people.
That's right. Well, all right. Well, let's jump in. Holy Week began. Well, first of all, just as a little bit of a plug here for Resurrection, if you're wondering, I'm already sold. I got to go to Holy Week. I'm super pumped. When are the services? Hold on. Relax. Palm Sunday, that's this coming Sunday, 3/24. It's going to be at 10 a.m. So our Sunday services will always be at 10 a.m. And then Maundy Thursday, which isn't Monday Thursday, what I thought as a kid, but Maundy, we'll talk about why, Maundy Thursday, will be on Thursday, 3/28 at 6 p.m. And Good Friday is also at 6 p.m. the next day on Friday. What's nice about the names of these services is that the day of the week in which they occur is part of the name. Little cheat code there. And then Holy Saturday is sort of an open house prayer vigil space. It's a really vacuous sort of moment in the week, but that will be at 10 a.m. to noon on Saturday, 3:30. And then the next day, Easter Sunday, on the 31st at 10 a.m., we're going to have our Easter service and a huge potluck party, which is always a huge blast. We always leave there full of joy and exhausted at the same time. So it's Res at its finest. That's the Holy Week schedule. You can find all this on our website, resaustin.com. You can find this whole breakdown of Holy Week services at resaustin.com/ATX. Make that easy for it, which stands for Austin, for those of you who don't know. For those in Canada who are listening. And but also on our main page, there's a big button, so you can click and find all of that there. All right, logistics out of the way, housekeeping out of the way. Let's begin with let's begin with sort of an overview of Holy Week, shall we? Who has a good grasp of like what's the big overarching story that we have in Holy Week? Why is it a whole week of services? What's the big idea for all of Holy Week? Anyone want to take a stab at that? Okay, I'll do it then. Thank you, Ryan Flanagan. You want to do it? No, I'll do it. How about this? Let me get us started, and you guys can either sit there quietly on the mics the whole episode,
Okay.
or you can just sort of jump in, whatever you want.
Yep.
Every once in a while, I'll go, yes.
Yeah. Because that's a good co-host move right there. Just keep it going. So Holy Week begins on Palm Sunday, and this is the story where Jesus is entering in Jerusalem, coming into Jerusalem with the palms, right? And we have these memories of waving palms and shouting Psalm 118, Hosanna in the highest, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And we're welcoming Jesus of Nazareth historically into Jerusalem, which in the Gospel of Mark is the beginning of the story where Jesus comes into Jerusalem riding on a colt, has a look around at the temple, and immediately curses a fig tree and then overturns tables in the temple court of the money changers who were exploiting the poor, right? Turning the house of prayer into a den of robbers, as Mark puts it. And so this is that moment where, which is a very different kind of moment than we will have in the end of the week on Friday. You have these same peoples welcoming Jesus with Hosanna, which means save now in Hebrew. And those same people will soon be saying, crucify him come Friday. So it's sort of an interesting storyline that begins on Palm Sunday. And Jesus is being welcomed with palms and with this psalm in particular. And it should remind us that there's a symbolism going on here of King David entering into Jerusalem, victorious, coming to sit on his throne. So that's what we are starting the week with, is welcoming King Jesus. There's a lot that happens there. That's how the story begins. And then on Maundy Thursday, we have a very intimate moment. We can dive into each of these a little bit more. A very intimate moment on Thursday where Jesus is sharing the Last Supper with his disciples before he washes feet and is betrayed and is handed over to the authorities. And Good Friday is the story of the crucifixion, the suffering and the crucifixion and death of Christ, which always has this. There's a moment at the Good Friday service where it lingers. It doesn't resolve. And that's because Thursday, Friday, and really Saturday and Sunday, or the Triduum, is actually one whole liturgy, one whole story. And so you will notice in these liturgies that we don't say goodbye at the end. We don't dismiss. You can go, but the story will go on. And the next day, the liturgy will pick up where we left off. It's really, really exciting. Exciting, I don't know if that's the right word. It's interesting. And then we have this again, I called it vacuous, but it's a quiet day on Holy Saturday in which we're reliving the moment of uncertainty and sort of that lingering, I think, like, God is dead. What do we do?
In the liturgy, it talks about we wait.
We wait. It's a day of waiting. Yeah, that's right. That's a good way to put it. And then Sunday, this is the one everyone knows about, is we celebrate the resurrection on Easter Sunday. With the women who first encountered the empty tomb and are sent with the news as the first preachers of the resurrection in all of church history. So, and then as we do, we throw the biggest party that we could think of and exhaust ourselves. And for us, we also have baptisms. We celebrate a lot. There's a lot of noise. It's over the top, and it's outside. It's beautiful. So that's sort of the big idea and the journey. And I'll say, and Easter doesn't end there. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But this is why Holy Week is a bit of it's a marathon for us, for the church. I'll just say, as a Christian looking at Holy Week, thinking, man, this is a lot. I got a lot going on that week. I don't know if I could do this. Can I just tell you, as a Christian, you have permission to order your life around the feast days of the church. And the rest of your life, as much as possible, can deal with the implications of that. I think a lot of people feel like, well, I have these commitments and I have, these appointments and I can't get off of work and I can't, or I don't want my kids to stay up that late. I'm a dad of 6. I totally get that. This is one of those moments where it's an exception to your typical rhythms that disrupts your typical rhythms, and that's a good thing. And I don't mean to share this like heavy-handed, like almost legalistically, like make sure you do all these services, but to say, hey, if you're exhausted, if this is a disruption to your steady rhythm, that's okay. And work and your appointments, they'll get over it. And people have holy obligations that they miss things for all the time, and that's okay. The world can deal with that. So
it's
as a
also
Christian,
a good time. Holy Week's also a good time to take your Lenten fasts seriously again. The ones
Oh,
that
to
you
re-up?
the ones that you have failed over the last
For
few
those
weeks.
who are relapsing.
Yeah. Little Way Chapel, she's someone that we get a lot of our, that's where our monthly liturgical guides come from.
Oh, yeah.
And that's also where our Holy Week for Holy Families packet that we have for you guys on the website. She put out something today about take this week to start preparing yourself for Holy Week.
Ooh, that's good.
And to allow how you can, if this is something that you really want to participate in, think about a way that you can maybe make some extra meals this week to give yourself easy meal prep. Preparing your house for Holy Week. Put things on your calendar that you want to make sure that you do, even as a family, and carve out time and really think about it this week so next week doesn't take you by surprise and you can really, I guess, enjoy. I'm using that term loosely.
Yeah.
Enter in.
Yeah.
Enter in, yeah.
Enter in to Holy Week.
And even next year, put it on your calendar.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you could Google right now what's Holy Week next year.
And kids don't have school on Friday,
Praise God.
so they can stay up a little bit later on Thursday night.
Or you just put them to bed on their regular time for your own sake. All
Well,
right.
not if you're at the service.
Oh, that's what I meant. That's what I meant. So this week you're telling us like get some good rest and prepare ahead
Yeah.
and stretch a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, we're even doing that right now, I think, with all of our logistics. We had a big meeting on Tuesday,
Yep.
really looking ahead at all of the list of things that we need to accomplish for Holy Week. And we're trying to get as much done now this week. So next week we're not in
Just
as
scrambling.
much of a flurry. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you should see our whiteboard. It is a full-on project management. If anybody's into like checklists and project management and color-coded
Oh, yeah.
tasks, we have a serious situation on our whiteboard right now. We're working hard for this. And because again, so that we can actually be present to the Holy Week.
Right.
And that's like we don't want to miss that either.
Right.
So, all right. So let's get into some of these details. I gave the overview, so I'm going to punt to one of you. I'm going to go around the table. No, I won't put you guys on the spot. Let's talk about Palm Sunday. What's Palm Sunday like? And what does it mean to you? And if you have a story about what Palm Sunday has meant to you in the past, I'd love to hear that too. Palm Sunday. Let's talk about it. Flanagan?
Well, I mean, I could
Other
share.
Ryan, go
I
ahead.
mean, Palm Sunday was the first. This is a personal story, but it was the first sermon I ever preached at a church. Was a Palm Sunday
Was
sermon.
Was it like, you know how stand-up comedians, their first experience is always really good? Was this one of those, or was it like you bombed?
I did neither. I don't.
Oh, it's just a base hit.
It's not. Yeah, it was a base hit. I mean, it was a seminarian, like up in Vancouver at this little Christian Reformed church. They weren't expecting a lot, so it maybe was a home run for them. I'm not sure, but it felt like a base hit to me. But no, I always have this special kind of like place in my heart for Palm Sunday because I preached my first sermon on Palm Sunday. But yeah, I mean, I think there's something really in like the story or the narrative really kind of comes like into full swing here, right? In Holy Week, we have prior to this. I mean, Jesus is coming to Jerusalem, right? He sets his face to Jerusalem at a certain point in the Gospels, and he's like headed there. The mission of God is headed to its kind of culmination in the Gospels, and we're kind of anticipating that. But now we're like finally at like the gates, right? We're at the point of Jesus coming into the city for that final week, and there's something so like anticipatory.
Something's
about
called
Palm
like, because wait, are you referring to how in the gospel lectionary we've been reading the gospels that have been approaching Jerusalem, and so we've been anticipating this whole time, preparing ourselves. That's the purple. That's the season, right? And now we're here
And now we're here.
at the gates of Jerusalem on Palm Sunday.
And it's like a mini Easter. We're joyous. We have palms. We're like, Hosanna. We're
Ooh,
not
that's
saying
an interesting-
Hallelujah, but it's almost like a dress or
Alex,
Easter
can you
dress
bleep that
rehearsal.
word out? Because it's still Lent. I'm not sure you can say that. But isn't that interesting? Palm Sunday is in some ways the Easter we thought we wanted. Mm-hmm. We thought we needed. Never thought about that. Breaking insights.
And the turn from the beginning of the service to the end of the service, where at the beginning you're saying Hosanna and you're praising God, and at the end you're saying crucify him with just as much energy, just as much strength. It's quite an emotional swing there.
A roller coaster.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's the king we thought we were welcoming, we soon turn our backs on and want dead. Yikes. So Holy Week is not, so for people like me who are like, hey, let's keep it light, have some fun. God is good, right? Holy Week is intense. There are some emotional surprises there that are not comfortable. What would we say to someone who's like, I don't want to go to church and have a serious buzzkill. I don't want to be sad. I don't want to go on this emotional ride. What would you say to that? What would you guys say to that? Because I know you can relate. I mean, it is an emotional roller coaster. There's like a lot going on, and it's personal. Why do you endure it when it's so emotionally taxing?
Because it makes the celebration better.
It's good to be sad sometimes. We're not good at that as Americans.
Yeah, we're not.
We're not good at leaning into sadness and being okay being sad. It's okay.
Or being accused.
Yeah. Oh,
Or
yeah.
indicted by something, right?
Yeah. Feeling guilty, maybe.
Guilty, yeah. It's uncomfortable. I think if I was to answer that question, I would say, regardless of how you feel, it's true. And we kind of need to face the reality of things, like the truth of things. We're the people that welcome Jesus on a cult, and then things turn pretty quick. We're those people. And it's better, I think, to deal with the reality of that than to pretend like everything's okay. I'm fine. I didn't do anything, right?
Well, and it's better to deal with it in community too. I think it's so
that's right.
beautiful. All the Maundy Thursday and the Good Friday services, because I didn't come from a liturgical background. So I did not grow up going to Maundy Thursday or Good Friday services as a kid. So I think the beauty of being able to see all the different pieces of the services and how strategic they are for us in preparing us for Easter, it's a lovely thing to come and be a part of and not be alone. Because you're still thinking about those things anyway.
Right.
Might as well do it in community around people that you love.
Yeah. So how big is that community? I think is a great question. We don't celebrate Palm Sunday as individuals, but we also don't just celebrate it as a particular church, a local church alone. This is an old tradition, and it's global. Like people throughout the world, the churches throughout the world are celebrating on this day. So there's some comfort in knowing we're a part of something global and historic and eternal, really. We'll continue to celebrate this.
Yeah, something else I was thinking about too is that we, like, especially as it relates to, like, for people who might feel uncomfortable or their sadness and all that kind of stuff, I think they're trying to think of how to describe this. I think there's comfort in Holy Week because even though there's like a lot of darkness and death and things like that, it's the story of like God coming near to us, and we like the incarnation in its fullness is like what we're about to experience. So like all of what we experienced at Christmas is now coming to like its culmination, where God's coming near to us even in death, and he's coming near even to those who are already dead. There's comfort here, right? This isn't just about making us feel bad for what we did to Jesus or something like that. It's about the fact that he's come near to us, even though we've turned away. He's come near to us, even though we experience pain and suffering and death.
Or even when we greet him with Hosanna and then turn our backs on him.
Right.
He comes near to us even in betrayal.
Yeah.
Which is such a paradox, right? Isn't that like such a mystery that this is the God we're discovering in Holy Week, the God who relentlessly draws near to us despite us. That's uncomfortable. And yet how profound a love that is. Ooh.
And he knew we were going to betray him as he was coming into the gates in Jerusalem.
And
Imagine that. He's coming into the gates and he's looking in the faces of all of these people who are shouting Hosanna, and he knows that in a couple of days they're going to betray him. But he still loves them.
I'm already starting to feel the feels. Flanagan, are we going to have to ask you to speak every time we want you to speak? You don't interrupt people.
Yes, you are going to have to ask me.
Would you say something?
We named, I love what you said about tying this Holy Week to the incarnation and God drawing near to us. And it reminds me of why we named our daughter Noel, even though she was born in the Easter season, because you can't have Easter without Christmas. And I love I didn't grow up with celebrating Holy Week or observing Holy Week. I grew up basically skipping over the death in order to celebrate the resurrection. And when I started learning that we are walking with Jesus, what the liturgical year affords us is to walk with Jesus from his conception and incarnation through his life, death, resurrection, ascension, like this grand narrative that we get to be a part of, walking with Jesus. It's all tied together, his incarnation, his resurrection. And this week is the climax of the story. It's like if you're watching a movie and you get to that moment where you just, you're completely emotionally invested, and this story is talking to your story, and you'll probably even cry. There's catharsis. It's all that. That's what's happening this next week.
That's a great way to put it. It's the part when, if you were to turn it off or pause it and say, let's finish it tomorrow, I'd be like, no. It is. That's a great way to put it. And so on Sunday morning, what does this look like for people maybe who've never participated in Holy Week or a Palm Sunday? What does Palm Sunday look like? How would they recognize it?
But there's palms.
There's palms. That's a good hint.
We start out in the parking lot, and we actually have a processional from the parking lot into the city of Jerusalem, the sanctuary. But there's movement in a way that we don't normally have movement. There's special songs that come up on Palm Sunday that we don't necessarily sing in other parts of the year. There's the palm branches and all that. It's kind of, it is really a way to kind of frame Holy Week for people and to get them into the story that actually is Holy Week in the Gospels. So,
and why? So I have two questions. Why the palms and why red? Why does everything turn red and why the palms? And why start in the parking lot? I mean, you sort of hinted to it there, but why not just start in the church and read about an entrance? Why do we? It's such a material moment, right? Aesthetic and material, meaning we see red, we see palms, we hold palms, we use our bodies to walk a certain journey. Why go through all of the hassle of doing all of this for this particular occasion? Why is it important to do that?
The symbolism. I mean, we are an embodied people. We are physical people. We are sacramental people. And our faith doesn't just exist in the realm of ideas or abstract,
theories or...
Yeah. It exists in our physical bodies. And so when we give ourselves to these colors and these movements, the dance, so to speak, the different settings, the courtyard, the outside of the gates, coming inside of the gates, coming to the altar. This is part of our spiritual formation, and it's so essential to who we are as human beings and as we become more truly human.
Yeah, so it also puts us in a position, at least for me, what's really powerful about that, especially as a kid, I remember this. Every Sunday, in liturgical churches growing up, I was part of a bunch, but I grew up Methodist mostly. And every Sunday there's something to look at, something to smell, something to do. And I really appreciated not just being told a story, but invited to walk through a story with my body. And you get that with full force on Palm Sunday. And I always watch Loving Kids on Palm Sunday too, because they kind of know what's going on, some of the younger ones, but they also have no idea what's going on. And how true to the story is that? Like, how reflective of us is that truly, that we kind of know what's going on, but if you feel like, I don't know what's going on, well, yeah, Like, neither did the people. And we only know because we have some hindsight. But what's cool about reliving this is that the reality of that story isn't just something we recall, but something that comes to the present to meet us again. Jesus is present, we believe, and is entering Jerusalem again. He's entering our Jerusalem. We're the ones holding the palms. We're the ones saying Hosanna. It's not just people 2,000 years ago, some event that happened in the Middle East, but something that is now happening in Austin, Texas in 2024. Is it 24? Like Jesus is entering on a cult into our Jerusalem and to the present reality that we now live. And that opens up a whole different box of questions for me about, so what does this world, what is it that Jesus is coming to redeem in this world, in this time and place? Will we be the people who say, "Save now, O King, the one who comes in the name of the Lord," and then we'll turn our backs? Like, what are the contexts in which we need redeeming? I wonder what Jesus would notice entering into our town, into Austin. You know what I'm saying? So it's like not in just Jerusalem, an ancient timeline, but now it's 2024 in Austin, and Jesus is still present, being welcomed as King, and is going to do a work of redemption this week in real people's lives and in societies. I think that's one of the gifts of actually reliving the story, not just thinking about it. You know what I mean?
And you know, similar to what the people of Jesus' time were expecting when he came in. They were expecting him to be riding on a horse, like a war horse, with a sword in his hand and blood dripping from the sword, because he just conquered his enemies, you know. And he doesn't. He comes in riding on an ass. And he's not carrying a sword. He is coming into a violent culture, a violent people, a people who want revenge, who want
To overthrow the Romans.
Yeah, they want violence.
Yeah.
They're bloodthirsty. Maybe that's why the color's red. I don't know. It might have something to do with blood. Maybe
We'll get to
one
that
of
on
you
Friday,
priests
right?
can answer. Well, I don't think the color's red on Friday, is it?
Yeah.
It is. So
There's
it's
no color.
The color,
Right.
yeah, you're right. But the color
Well,
is
black.
for the passion.
It starts off red,
yes.
right? Well, I guess it's
Yeah.
stripped on.
It's
Stripped
we're
on
getting ahead of
Thursday.
ourselves,
Sorry.
guys.
Spoiler alert.
But you're right. They're expecting Jesus on a tank or on a drone.
Well, and they don't. It's this. There's precedent in Israel for this, right? So the Maccabean revolt against the was it the Romans? I can't remember who the revolt was from, but the Maccabeans overthrew their oppressor, and Judas Maccabeus comes into Jerusalem like in a very similar manner. If you read the account, it's like it feels very much like this, where the people are shouting hosannas and things like that.
This isn't the first time that's
this
happened.
isn't the first time,
Right.
and so they have this in their memory of like, this is the Messiah. This is what we're looking for, is someone who's going to throw off our Roman oppressors. But it's also like it's abnormal too, right? Like we've got a donkey that he's riding on, and the lead up to this isn't like he's conquered anything yet.
Right.
He's like, so there is this kind of strange like sense to this story that I think people have a hard time with.
Well, and I think that Jesus today is coming into the same kind of space with this, to people who are in the same kind of heart, who have the same kind of heart and desire for violence and blood and revenge. I'm thinking of, the way that many Christians today are, they want to conquer, they want to conquer the culture. They want to conquer this. We have culture wars, etc. And Jesus is coming in on a donkey still with olive branches and saying
In weakness,
peace,
in fact.
saying, my peace is different than the peace that you think that you're going to accomplish by, slaying your enemies.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on here. It's not just some sort of spiritual rescue, but Jesus is in not only his incarnation coming as he did, is making a comment on God's solidarity with the poor, God's solidarity with the excluded, God's solidarity with the weak, and God's way of doing things that will secure a different outcome than ours, our way of doing things. There's a lot. There's political power. There's like violence. There's all kinds of things. Again, I mentioned the money changers' tables being overturned. There's an economic implication to this. The people lining the roads with palm branches and laying down their clothes were a band of beggars. I mean, these were not the elite, the rich, the powerful. These were people who were crying out for liberation. And Jesus would do that, but in a way that I think surprised all of them. But we'll get to that. So we have the palms, we process in, there's a whole wonderful service there that you should, and many churches, most churches in fact, will also read the Passion on that day, but the Passion really belongs on Friday. The reason they put it sometimes on Sunday is because sometimes people don't make a priority to come on Friday, but our folks are going to come on Friday, so we're going to get to that. Actually, in the history of Holy Week, there's like a what do they call it? Spy Tuesday? Is it called?
Oh, there's like Holy in the packet. It talks about Holy Monday and Holy Tuesday.
There you go. There's
for,
things
for families.
For
You
families.
should check this out. It's really good.
The packet for families.
Oh yeah. And they can get this on the website. Yeah. Cool. But let's jump to Thursday, Maundy Thursday. Why is it Maundy, Maundy, and not Monday? Anybody know that one?
Well, it means mandate. The Maundy is a word that can be translated to mandate or commandment. So that's really it's supposed to highlight the part of
What's the command? What's the mandate?
Yes, Jesus with the disciples in the upper room, and he washes their feet and gives them the command to love one another as he has loved them. And so it's kind of this moment right before his passion, like this is his last chance to say like his final words to them, essentially. And what he does in that moment is really important, right? It's his last chance to kind of get up whatever he needs to say to them out, and he washes their feet and says, "Love one another," and then he gives them the meal to share. So,
and there's another command in that, even an imperative, right? Do this.
Yeah, do this in remembrance of me.
So there's a lot of it's a Thursday night supper of like final commands before we turn the corner to Friday. So what do people expect on Thursday? What's the experience there? And if you have your own stories of a Maundy Thursday, please feel free to share. I remember realizing that it wasn't called Monday Thursday. I remember being a kid realizing that. Felt like I had arrived. Still didn't know what Maundy meant. I just thought, because my folks are from West Texas, and my dad says like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, you know? And so I thought it was sort of a Monday. Anyways.
I always think it's a funny thing that we do. I mean, it would have been very natural for people to get their feet washed in the culture of Jesus' time, because they were walking around in dirt roads and sandals, but it would normally be the servants in a house who are the lowest, in society, who would have to stoop to that disgusting, responsibility of washing people's feet. And here we are, 2,000 years later, as a ritual act, doing the same thing.
Is this why Peter took such offense to it, you think?
Totally. He thought Jesus was royal. I mean, he knew that Jesus was the Son of God. Like, why would the Son of God, this same Jesus who, took the sword and cut off the soldier's ear right around that time, maybe the next day or something, as Jesus is entering the garden. That night, actually, he does it. Peter has this idea that Jesus should be the highest one. He should be sitting at the highest, the best position at the table. Like, we should be washing your feet. Yeah. And here Jesus is once again flipping the whole world on its head, saying, no, if you're going to follow me, if you believe in me, then you're going to do as I do. you're going to stoop to this level, and you're going to wash each other's feet.
And he says something also is like, as I've done to you, do to others, right? So as I've loved you, love one another. What's interesting about the foot washing moment is it is just a practical housekeeping thing. And yet everything that Jesus does on this night that seems to be ordinary practical housekeeping sorts of things like that and passing a cup and breaking bread has a much deeper, more brilliant revelation cooking in it. What is the deeper meaning behind the foot washing? What is Jesus really washing our feet? Is it just our feet? What is Jesus washing, and why is he doing it? That should be the question that comes to mind. What do you guys think about the answer to this one?
Well, I have an answer. I'm not sure if it's the one you're looking for.
I'm just trying to set up. I'm trying to host here, Ron.
Yeah,
I
get it.
Conversation.
So we can go back and forth on this a little bit. The thought that came to my mind was that we see the institution of the Lord's Supper as a sacrament, right? Like he initiates a sacrament in breaking bread and sharing the wine with them that night. And I've never really thought about the idea that like the foot washing is a sacrament. Or it could be, I mean, we don't consider it a sacrament officially in that sense, but there, in the sense that God is present in like serving another person by washing their feet. So God is present as we go out and serve others. This mandate to love other people that is such a huge part of our Maundy Thursday service. I love that idea that there's something sacramental in the washing of feet. There's something like God is in this. Like every time you go out and serve, whether it's a family member, neighbor, a friend, loved one, whatever it might be, that's like a sacramental act in a sense. Yeah. So that's where my mind was going.
I'm totally with you on that. I think you're right, though. I think but it alludes to a deeper washing of baptism, for sure. But also, what is baptism revealing? The forgiveness of sins. And it reminds me of Philippians 2, the passage where it talks about Jesus did not see equality with God as something to be held onto, but emptied himself, becoming a servant, a slave of all. Even being obedient to the point of death. You know, the descent of the great descent, the condescension of God.
The mission of God.
Yes, this is exactly the mission of God. And you see that, there's like a moment, a glimpse of that in the foot washing that Peter, I think, is really like jarred by. Like, wait, how low can you go? It's sort of like, you should not be going this low, right? And it's startling that this is the mission of God. Most would think of victory and conquer as an upward thing. And yet we find the opposite in the great descent, not only from the sending of the Son and the incarnation to the washing of feet, being in the lowest social status of society, to being humiliated and suffering and dying. It doesn't even end there. I'm getting ahead of ourselves. But then descending to the lower parts of death, descending to death, to Hades itself. And
that's why we need multiple days, because
it's a long journey.
There's layers here that we're pulling back here of the incarnation and like coming to its fruition in Holy Week. So you're right. Like we'll talk about that. Holy Saturday. We're getting there.
I have a leading question for you.
Here we go.
Why do you priests wear a stole?
I was thinking about that.
Mostly for the aesthetic, so
It's
people
so
know
pretty.
we're priests.
I like to stand out.
Can you define the word stole too?
So the
What is
scarf
that?
that you all see that priests and deacons, by the way, wear.
Deacon wears it across,
Sort of across
the body.
to the hips, shoulder to the hips. You'll see priests wearing it shoulder straight down. And it's that garment is to remind us of this foot washing role that we play in the church. So whenever we have a foot washing at the church, this is why we'll always have the clergy and vestry members or leaders in the church wash feet, because to follow Jesus as a leader means to be a leader like Jesus, right? And how did Jesus lead? But by washing feet, by becoming the least, by lowering himself, right? In those beautiful acts of self-giving love and service. And so that stole, when we put that on actually in the sacristy or when we vest, we kiss the neck of the stole, and to halt us, not just throw a vestment on, but to realize what you're putting on, like what role of self-giving love and service you're putting on, and being in solidarity with that same act of service that we find in Christ. The thing he did to us, now we're being invited to do to others. So it's like we take that command very seriously.
Are you going to use your stool to dry people's feet on Thursday?
I think that would. I don't know about that. We'll use towels. That's an interesting. Thanks for putting it on the spot. We probably should, huh? We have towels. We have lots of towels.
I mean, it represents a towel.
It does.
It does, yeah. I would say it would not work well as a towel.
And then leave it dirty all
at
year.
least after the first person.
Burlap, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
No, I mean, it would work for one person basically. And then after that, it's like we're just wiping water around. So, yeah. But
Yeah. All right. So moving on, we have the Last Supper and the words of institution is what we call them. So anytime we're at the table and we're celebrating Holy Eucharist every Sunday, and we have those, and Jesus took bread, and Jesus took the cup and said, he blessed it, broke it, and gave it to them, saying, yada yada, do this in remembrance of me. That whole yada yada sounds irreverent, but I'm just trying to get through the.
At least it's Hebrew.
Yeah, it's true. No, do this in remembrance of me are those the mandates, those commands, and what's going on? Help me to like place this ritual act. Because I think you have a good point here, Ryan. These aren't just ritual acts that appeared out of nowhere, but they have a storyline. They have like a context.
Yeah.
They're eating.
It's Passover.
They're eating.
It's really important because they're not just sitting and eating dinner together for the sake of doing that. It's Passover time. So it's a traditional Passover meal that they're eating together.
So if this meal is part of the Passover, what storyline is this connecting us to?
It's connecting us back to Egypt.
That's right. And that night of deliverance, the Exodus, where the same night where they painted the lamb's blood on the doorpost and then ate in haste, right, with their loins girded, ready to go. This is that, every Sunday is actually that meal. And so this is a special moment in the life of the church where we pause to reflect on this meal in even a deeper way. Especially our church, we really get down with that because it's such a central meal. But we are, the Passover lamb has now come. And Jesus is offering in this meal, even before he is crucified, as a foretelling, as a, like a foreshadowing, a revelation ahead of the thing. Jesus is bringing us this meal of the cross even before it happens. And will leave us with this meal for thousands of years since it's happened, but not in some sort of merely recollective sort of way, but as though we are feasting on the benefits of the cross of Christ as it happened. It's a really sort of a mysterious, profound thing. So on Maundy Thursday, we pause to really take that in, and it's more somber. It's a little slower. It's more. There's a lot more reverence going on. We even pray a litany for the ways that we have been irreverent to this meal throughout the year, this most sacred moment. So it's one of my favorite moments of the year, the Holy Eucharist.
Something that I've been thinking about just with research and looking a woman who has the Instagram handle We Who Thirst. She talks about when you're painting this picture, and you're thinking about the Last Supper, we all have that image in our head of Jesus with just the 12 disciples and the men. And so she asks the question, were there women and children present at this Passover meal? And she talks about how, yes, there probably were, because it was a Passover meal. And traditionally, the Passover meal was celebrated with the nuclear family. And we know that there were women who were following Jesus.
Yep, the whole community.
And so there probably were, if you can kind of flip that picture in your head of what the Last Supper meal looked like, it was probably a big room full of people participating in this with him.
And certainly the 12 were there.
Oh yeah, they were there.
That's, I think, why the gospel writers go out of their way to say the 12. There's always this implication that when the 12 are referenced, yes, they're there. And there's the community of disciples are also there as well. So that's an interesting image for us to approach the table with it. Because I think a lot of, like, if you've seen the famous paintings, you can imagine that who's at the table. This most sacred moments are these, 30s-ish young white Italian guys, right? Blue collar workers, and that's it. And it's not so simple, is it? So I think before we get any pushback about this, whatever, because this is happening in Palestine, but also, and these are brown people, but also like when we realized that the community following Jesus was full of women and men and children, we can see ourselves in that community. We can see people unlike us in that community. It becomes truly a revelation of those who Jesus has surrounded himself with, all of us. So it's a hospitable revelation in a lot of ways, right?
Right. And which valuable. Makes him once again look like an unlikely king.
Totally. Just letting that sink in.
What do we do?
I'm just kind of curious if I go quiet, what'll happen.
We
sometimes.
strip the table too during Maundy Thursday.
Yeah. So after these words, "This is my body," that's a whole podcast right there.
Because this is the last
my
supper
blood
before he dies. So we take everything out.
Yeah. Say more about this. It's a bit of a dramatic moment.
Yeah. So at the end of the Maundy Thursday service, while Psalm 22, my God, why hast thou forsaken me, is being said, the clergy are taking everything away from the table, all of the ornaments, all of the candles and everything off of the table to symbolize the coming death, that this was his last supper, and we don't get to eat anymore. We don't get to eat anymore. And so we cover the cross with put a black shroud over the cross, and we exit in silence, right?
Yeah.
Maundy Thursday.
Yeah.
No recessional hymn. It's just the starkness of an empty room, an empty table, and we leave in silence.
Yeah, and the descent for Christ goes deeper still, because the stripping of the altar is symbolic of his being stripped of his own clothes, being taken into custody, stripped of his
dignity.
His dignity and the clothes, sort of now mocked and spat upon. There's the whole story sort of turns, and the descent goes deeper still, which leads us. So it's and we leave in silence, and it feels like an abrupt, there should be more to this. It should feel that way because there is more to this. Here we go through Good Friday, which is an interesting name for that service, but it is indeed a Good Friday. What happens on Good Friday? What do we expect? What's the story for Good Friday, and what do we expect to see on Good Friday? Who wants to take a shot at that one?
I can do it.
Go for it, Melissa.
So this is after the Last Supper on Thursday. Also, this is after Jesus is praying in the Garden of Gethsemane with his disciples, and he has been taken, and he's taken away, and he's sentenced to death, and he is made to carry his cross up a hill, and then as he's mocked, he's nailed to the cross and left to die a horrible Roman death. So our Good Friday service is quiet.
It's heavy.
It's heavy.
Yeah.
It's dark. We keep the lights really low. There's is there any singing?
There's singing. That's one of the only days of the year I bust out my Telecaster because it's so mellow.
Got it.
I love that. I love that one happens. But there's also, for us, we do a veneration of the cross.
Yes.
There's a lot of singing, actually.
Okay. But you're very strategic about what songs you choose,
There's no
right?
rock and roll.
No. We're
It's
not happy.
It's a different mode.
A lot of spirituals. We do a lot of African American spirituals that day.
Why? Tell us why.
In this country, and we have a history. How far back do you want me to go? of a people on this land who have been oppressed and have been the most in need of deliverance. And it makes, and their song is the sound in the ground. It is the sound of this land. And, many of us in our context are, we grew up wealthy, privileged lives, but this is a way, by singing their song, this is a way that we can connect, engage, empathize,
Dignify even.
feel, honor, and for example, were you there when they crucified my Lord? That's a Black spiritual. Pass me not, O gentle Savior. We will sing these songs, and it's more than just a tune, right? It's the kind of music that comes from deep in the soul and connects people's souls. When you're singing, whoa, 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 sometimes, there's like a swell in the room, and it's a groan. It's like the inward groan. We don't have the words, so we groan our worship to God. So
It's a music that comes from a place of suffering, truly, right? And there's some access that it has that it reveals because of that other music might not have. That's really profound. It's that whole evening. Another thing we'll notice is the procession, the reproaches, right? Where our church's tradition is that the baptismal font is emptied of its water and filled with rose petals, and we, as we pray, these reproaches that are mixed in with the trisagion. Trisagion. We stop 3 times on our way to the cross that has been brought in, by the way. It's another dramatic moment. Laid on the ground up in the sanctuary area, and we process forward, stopping and meditating as we approach this cross, this instrument of our salvation. Which is another interesting sort of twist, like this common Roman political torture device, like the electric chair sort of the day, has now become the thing we find on people's necks as a symbol of salvation, right? And so we take inventory of this cross, this wooden cross. We come forward, and our people will kneel, will touch the cross. They'll stay there for a minute. They'll kiss the cross. They'll lay their rose petal there with their kids, and it's this. And there's music, there's prayer happening, and it's just a moment we create lots of space for people to encounter this great mystery of God's love revealed in one of the most gruesome, sort of lowliest ways of the human experience and suffering. That our God loves us to the extent that he would enter into the suffering for our sake, taking on the full force of evil, the brunt of all of sin and death, directed on one human being, our God, for our sake, for our redemption. This is the mystery that we're encountering on Good Friday. So it's a heavy moment. I could feel it already. So Holy Saturday is more of that waiting, that silence. There's grief even happening on Holy Saturday. And we're thinking also of the disciples, where they must have been in their heads on Holy Saturday. This Lord, this friend of theirs is now dead, and their hopes they had put in this person, they didn't know what to say about that. So there's this sort of unanswered thing there, awaiting, that we at the church create some space for.
And we're going to, Angela is actually going to help us out with this a lot, but we're actually going to have some time. It's going to be, like you said, a contemplative space, but we're actually going to go through the stations of the cross. So at 10 a.m., if you get there at 10 a.m., there will be a time to corporately do that together, where she'll lead us through the stations of the cross. Or you could come in anytime at that point and between 10 and noon and just do it by yourself. So it's really contemplative, everything you just said, Sean, but it's kind of focused around the station. So even though that's typically something you might do on Good Friday, it's another time to just really reflect on the journey that Jesus took to the cross. So I think it's really beautiful. It'll be a really great space to just sit wait and reflect on it.
What if you don't know what to do? If you come Saturday and you're like, I don't know what to do here. I don't know how to do the Stations of the Cross. For the newbies, what can we tell them about what to expect there?
Angie's done a great job of putting together a booklet that will guide you through each section, and she's got it all taken care of. So you're in good
she'll
hands.
guide too. She's going to do it together, right?
Yeah, you're in good hands with Angela. She'll do a great job of helping you if this is your first time. So,
And I'd say that for the whole of Holy Week, if you've never done this and you feel like, oh man, I'm a newbie. Like you're in good company. We got a lot of newbies, and you can't break Holy Week.
yeah,
You really can't.
yeah.
Yeah. Sit towards the middle or the back so you won't be like the first in line to do anything.
Here's a pro
And
tip.
you can watch other people as they go and just follow their movements.
But the clergy will all do things first, so you
Yes.
can watch them. And if you don't know what you're doing and you find yourself like, what do I do? Seriously, ask your neighbor or ask one of the clergy, like, hey, what do I do? Or just watch people. And this is actually a really interesting side point, but this is how we learn liturgy is by doing it with people who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then just learn, like mimicking them.
Yeah.
So we're mimicking people as they mimic the church, as the church mimics the journey of Christ, which is sort of a beautiful.
It's how formation
That's how it works.
should be in a lot of ways. So,
Yeah. Well, and like take the time to kind of look through and read through. And even if you have kids, talk to your kids about what they're going to experience.
Oh, that's great.
And then that also kind of prepares you in your heart as well.
And if only we had some downloadable resources or printouts.
Oh, we do.
For
we
this
do.
sort of thing.
We do. It's on the website.
On the website.
It'll be if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the show notes probably, right?
It will be.
Yes.
I hope. Let's see.
It will be.
Let us know if they're there. That'd be great. Alex did a great
And if
job.
they're not, email Alex at
So that's Holy Saturday, which is beautiful, and then Easter Sunday. What do we expect on Easter Sunday? Trumpets.
Yeah.
Are we seriously gonna have trumpets?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
Trumpet.
We're gonna have
yes.
an award-winning trumpeter.
Yeah. The
great.
best freshman trumpeter in the state of Texas.
I believe it.
And likely award-winning drummers, because
yes.
all of them.
At least 2 drummers.
Okay.
And a good time. So
Yes.
Lots
Easter,
of cowbells.
yeah, like hundreds of cowbells.
We will also have earplugs. We
Yes,
do.
earplugs.
We have earplugs for people who don't like the cowbells, but know that we're outside, so the noise kind of dissipates. So it's not that big of a deal.
I feel like we're off to a strange start for describing Easter Sunday, but this is how Res does things. Let's back up a little bit. What is the event that we're observing on Easter? What's the reality, the good news, the thing that's happening in the life of Jesus and in the church? That we are,
resurrection.
the resurrection.
Our namesake.
Yeah.
So
It's church's
it is our
namesake.
namesake. That's
Yeah.
right. I forgot about that. So why is the resurrection such a big deal? You know, it took me a long time to sort of connect the dots on this. I'm embarrassed to say. I think it wasn't until, like, I knew that Jesus is raised, and that's great. But I grew up in a church context where the big deal was the cross. So the resurrection didn't make a lot of sense. The story ended at the cross, right? And I come to find out the church keeps telling the story, and we find that God has raised the Son from the dead in body, not in merely spirit, but in body. Why is the bodily resurrection historically on this earth in this human timeline? Why is it so important and good news? Anybody want to take a hack at that?
I mean, there
You
are
guys
many,
can ask
there are
questions
many,
too. I don't
many-
mean to be setting you up.
There are many important facets to this, but I think what we do as Christians would be completely pointless if the resurrection didn't happen.
Why is that? Why for you? What do you mean?
And
by
we would be most pitied,
as Paul says,
as
right?
Paul says. Because why would you put yourself through the cost of discipleship if Jesus didn't raise from the dead? Why follow this guy who washes people's dirty feet? You know, if he didn't raise from the dead, he conquered death. I mean,
So this moment is sort of a verification of the person of Jesus, who said all along, the Son of Man will be put to death and will be raised after 3 days.
if I be lifted up.
Right.
It's fulfilling God's promise that
Yeah,
God
but-
made to us.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm trying to say is, it verifies that what Jesus said about himself is true. That he wasn't insane,
Right.
and he wasn't just sort of, I don't know, blowing smoke, but actually knew, and then fulfilled this thing. So Jesus is who he says he is a big part of this for me. But the bodily part, I think, is also sort of interesting, isn't it? Why not just a spiritual resurrection?
Yeah. Like let him come back as a ghost.
And
Why not?
Right. And we knew that this was a big deal in the early church because even in the gospel accounts, they go to great lengths to point out the physical nature of the resurrected body
Yeah.
of Jesus. Why is that so important? What's at stake here?
I don't know, Sean. What's at stake here?
I don't mean to be. Because God, first of all, God made, right? God created. This was his idea. Bodies are not awful or ugly or shameful. These are things that God has created and taken delight in. These are his creation. We are creatures. This is the truth we meditate on as we enter into Lent, right? We are creatures dependent on God. And those creatures, not only our bodies, but all of the earth, the whole earth, all of creation is right behind Jesus in that resurrection. He's the first fruits of the new creation, Scripture says. So he's leading this God making all things new, not only in our souls, but in the material world that God loves and created. This is what Jesus is leading the charge of in resurrection. So we read in Revelation, there's a new heaven coming down, a new Jerusalem coming down from heaven, a new heavens and a new earth, raised bodies. Like matter matters, as N.T. Wright says, right? We're not escaping this material reality, but God is redeeming all of it because it all belongs to him and he's not giving an inch of it up. And I think, personally, that is amazing. That has such far-reaching implications. So that, for me as a young person, realizing, the story doesn't end at the forgiveness of my sins spiritually at the cross, but actually means not the forgiveness of sins, but also a new life, an actual life, not just spiritually, but also physically. This body will be raised. This earth will be made new. Things will be made right in the world. So things like our bodily suffering will be redeemed in body. The ailments that we have, the illnesses, the chronic diseases, you name it, the experience. Yeah, it's the fullness of the human experience that's being rescued, and not just part of it. This you see this in the incarnation, actually, really in the conception, right, and the Annunciation, that this is happening. That God could have in spirit just redeemed the world, but instead God became incarnate. Took on flesh and blood, moved into the neighborhood, as Peterson says, right, in order to redeem it. And this is why the Great Descent, God sending the Son, being conceived, incarnate, embodied, and fleshed, entering into the plight of the poor, the plight of the refugee, his family, they were refugees, and entering into the lowest stations of society, entering into the deepest depths of human suffering, ultimately entering into the deepest depths of sin and evil. He who knew no sin became sin for our sake, right? So that we could be redeemed by the blood of the cross. But you guys, I'm just going to keep going. The story doesn't end there. What's cool is Jesus descends into hell in order to pave a return route through himself, reconciling all things to God, as Colossians 1 says and as 2 Corinthians say. It is. But like Jesus, we think he's in the grave having a nap. He's at work. He is at work. And that's a holy mystery for Holy Saturday. But on the resurrection on Easter Sunday, we see the Father raising the Son. And this is a signal to the rest of us for the seen world, right? The material world, that God is at work making all things new. So Easter isn't a moment. I like to say it's a lifestyle. It's like good news. And to your point, it doesn't end on Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
We observe this for how many weeks?
7
weeks.
Yeah, the thought that came to my mind in all of what you just said, which was beautiful, is that like death needed to be defeated. Like, so to your point of like why Easter, why is this so important, is like because it wasn't enough that he died on the cross and like that sin was taken care of, but death itself needed to be defeated, and he overcame death in rising again, and that's so critical to our story. I mean, this is why our funeral liturgies are so beautiful, because there's a call to rejoice because death has been defeated.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have to be sad. I mean, we are sad. We grieve at funerals.
no despair, though.
But there are moments in the liturgy where it talks about rejoicing because death has been defeated. And it's like, that changes everything.
So on Easter Sunday, one of the things I love, it is like the middle finger for me. The greatest middle finger is where, O death, is your victory. I'm like, it just is my Rage Against the Machine moment.
Like that song, oh death, where is your sting?
We should sing that. Sweet. And then
on the spot here.
And our Paschal candle, our Christ candle, is just this monument of where, O death, is your victory. Where? How's it go? Which one is it?
Where is your victory?
I know, but where? It's O death, where is your sting? O hell, where is your victory?
Where is your victory?
And then it's like, O church, come stand in the light. Oh, your God is not dead; He's alive.
The glory of God has defeated the night.
Yeah. And it's very poignant too in thinking about if you have attended those, the Good Friday and the Maundy Thursday service, and that dark, like He's defeated the night.
That's the roller coaster we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And so just to add to this whole, like, why is Easter important? And connecting it to music, I was thinking just something that came to mind was a Switchfoot song. For all of you Switchfoot fans out there, which, you know,
show of hands.
I know Sean is a Switchfoot
You don't like
fan.
Switchfoot, Flanagan?
I actually haven't listened to very much.
So they have
Are
a
you
song.
even a Christian?
They have a song called 24. And there's one line in there that just came to mind as we've been talking, where he talks about how you're raising the dead in me, because he's referring to God. And he talks about how we are the second man, like as Paul says. Yeah, right. So the idea is that, like,
Sing Melissa, you know.
just as like he was raised from the dead to defeat death and all that stuff, it also sets a new path for us in which, like, the dead inside of us can be raised. Like, we can be transformed because of the power of Easter. But the power of the resurrection actually can be enacted in us, which is good news for us, not just for when we die, but also for, like, today. That we can live in light of the resurection now.
So now, what's cool about this whole story, when we look back to the beginning of to the garden, where humanity was made to live forever with God, and was bit by, in their disobedience, was bit by death. Now they will die. Now forever humanity is plagued with death. On Easter Sunday, in the resurrection, though we die, we will live forever, actually. And so the curse is undone. The serpent now is not biting us, but has been stepped on, crushed, trampled over by death itself. And so this is like sort of a bookend of the story. It's really amazing. So now we're living in this act, this sort of third act, I guess, or I don't know what fourth act of the story, where as N.T. Wright says, like, Christ is risen, therefore garden. Like, and he says this as a point to say, get to work. There's work to be done with God in this springtime world now, actually, where we are not burning. Like, the world's not going to go to hell in a handbasket. Our bodies are not going to be left behind. We're not left to the despair of injustices and suffering. We're not abandoned in our sin and our brokenness. But God is victorious. Christus Victor, God is victorious, and now filled with hope, filled with the Holy Spirit, with the living church, we now march on with Christ to this new world that God is setting up that begins now. And so what's really interesting is, in order to really appreciate that, I think you got to go on the journey a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? Because in the journey you realize, oh, this is why it's so valuable for me to welcome Christ, to betray him, to be in that room with the Last Supper, and to realize, like, oh, I'm the one in need of foot washing. I'm the one in need of this meal. To realize on Good Friday, oh, I'm the one who said crucify him. Oh, I'm the one who's put him there. This is my brokenness that he's come to redeem, not somebody else's. Mine. I'm the one who needs to sit in waiting and let this sink in before this interruption of God's resurrection on Sunday. And because of all that, because you've identified yourself with, I'm the one who is in need of redemption, you can therefore also say, I am the one who's being raised with Christ. And so on Easter Sunday, we have people who are actually being baptized. I think we have what's the tally, 54 baptisms coming up here?
54, yes.
50, somewhere, más o menos.
I think we have at least 5 or 6
It's
already.
gonna be crazy. And so this is why our church kind of goes nuts with baptisms, with we bang on the door, right? There's all kinds. We got hundreds of cowbells. The A words come back. The music is bright. There's a flowering of the cross. Everything goes white from red, right, to white. It's a bit of a turn in the story, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if that doesn't get you jacked up on Mountain Dew for Easter and Holy Week, I don't know what will.
I know something else that will.
Yeah, what?
The album that we're releasing on Monday.
Let's can we take a minute and talk about that?
Well, we're going to have a whole podcast around this, so this is just a
I'll
promo,
just
right?
say
a
that
teaser.
on
I like
Monday of Holy Week, Monday in Holy Week, we are releasing a 3-song EP that the lyrics of which contain much of the themes that we were talking about.
That's
Till
awesome.
the final atom shall another Eden sow.
I've heard it, and it's amazing. I like your other work, but I was just like, whoa.
I'm very proud of this.
This
and
is
very
work on another
excited.
level.
Yeah. So tell all your friends. Listen to it yourself. Tell all
What's
your
it called
friends.
again?
The album is called 3 Gifts, and it's about faith, hope, and love.
Yeah, and it's Ryan Flanagan and John Guerra.
John Guerra.
Yep.
So pay attention for that. We'll send it in the newsletter, put it all over the socials, but hopefully we'll also have a time to sit down and have an episode talking about that music. So thanks for doing that. If you're listening to this, please know that you're invited to, or watching, you're invited to participate with us in Holy Week. If some of the thoughts you've had is like, I haven't been baptized. I'm going to get baptized. Come and talk to us, email us, text us, do something, reach out. We have a family guide to baptism. So if for yourself or for your children, you have some questions or just want to know more about baptism, y'all, this is we love talking about this. This is such great news. It's a great time to explore this. So please reach out to us and we can get you that packet. We can have those discussions. And then also, I want to say to all our Res folks, if you're still listening, I know they're dedicated people. They're just, and I apologize ahead of time for the folks in Canada and Indianapolis and our listeners worldwide. But we're going to have a pretty amazing party, and we could use your help hosting the neighborhood. So look in the newsletter for ways that you can show up early and serve, and or bring something for a side or an appetizer for the potluck. We'll get the mains, but we're going to throw a shindig. We're going to party like it's 1999. Because if you can't party on Easter Sunday, you can't party any day of the year, in my opinion. So we're going to have a good time. Please come and join us for that. Everybody's welcome. We'd love to have you and see you there. I hope this discussion has been helpful. Thank you to my friends for walking us through these things and putting up with all my questions. Until next time, God bless you, and have a holy week. Get it?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. God bless.